Hey y'all, I'm Elisa and I am the Scrappy Wife behind scrappywife.com, and today I have a Bible journaling process video for you. My desk is already messy to start with because I have just unboxed the Storyteller devotional, the newest devotional from Illustrated Faith. It is the August devotional and it was written by Janet, who is Top Knots in Jesus here on social media. You can find her and I highly recommend you follow her. I am so excited for this devotional, and I opened it up and started reading, and you can see I already had notes. I didn't even get to the first Bible journaling prompts. I just want to journal some of the things that jumped out to me in this first setting, which is the prologue, which has us looking at Psalm 139:16, which happens to say, "Your eyes saw me when I was formless. All my days were written in your book and planned before a single one of them began." And she just has some fantastic things to say about God being the author of our story, about how every action in our lives is on purpose, that there's not really a happenstance. God is orchestrating and writing and rewriting in the background. And it was just some really good thoughts that were down there. So I'm going to jump in. I'm going to do a little bit of mixed media. I'm going to use some of these adorable die cuts that came with the kit because look at those. They are absolutely gorgeous. So excited to use these, excited to jump into this kit. I will put you on fast forward and we will get going. As the background for this page, I'm going to use this piece of notebook paper because what better way to write your story than good old-fashioned paper and pen? So I'm going to use this notebook paper, and I'm using the Liquitex Matte Gel Medium, laying down a pretty good covering of it, and I'm going to put the notebook paper on top. And the reason is I could have just used adhesive, just regular old tape runner, but I'm going to be cutting through this notebook paper, and I decided that the matte gel medium would add some strength to the page. I could have also used gesso. The gesso I currently have is kind of gritty. I don't really like it actually. So I'm just using the matte gel medium that I have on hand, and I'm covering the top of the paper also. Again, this isn't necessary for bleed through or anything like that, but I plan on cutting through this Bible page. And the reason for that, you'll see in a second, I'm going to create a woven pattern, and so I'm using the matte gel medium as kind of something to add a stiffness, add some strength to the page so that it will hold up well under the conditions, under the cutting that I have planned for it. I make sure it's really dry, and then I'm going to trim off the edges and start planning the weaving pattern that I'm going to use as the background for this page. I kind of toy around with whether I want to add a little bit more notebook paper at angles to create some more lines, and then I'm looking at my typewriter, seeing how I'm going to position them on the page, and I end up changing my mind anyway. But I decided the next step has got to be adding this weaving pattern that I am going for. And I'm using this paper. This is scrap paper from a Jane Davenport notepad I got at Michael's, I feel like almost 2 years ago. And what I'm doing right here, I'm starting at that red line, and I put that red line on the notebook paper there for a reason, because on the back side I didn't want to cut through the words on the back side of the paper. So I positioned my notebook paper in a way so that that red line would tell me where to stop cutting. And I've measured out, I've made 1/2-inch marks down my paper, and I'm drawing lines, you'll see here, that I'm going to cut along. And these lines will show me where I can weave in and out the strips of the Jane Davenport paper that I'm going to cut. So I take my tiny detail scissors, I poke a small hole at the bottom of the line, and then slowly work my way up. As you do this, the page does become fragile. You want to be careful. You cannot go too close to the edges at the top or the bottom, or you will start to have some tearing. And actually, I drew the lines a little farther than what I meant to go, but I'm just working slowly and carefully through cutting through these pages. Again, it's very dry. They're slightly thicker because of the matte gel medium that I've put on and that I've layered on, and I think that's adding some strength that's really going to help me as I cut and kind of mess up the structure of the page. And again, I've been careful to measure it out so that the words on the other side of the page are not affected. I'm using the weaving pattern because in Psalm 139, right before the verse that Janet has us looking at, in 139:13 is the famous verse, "For it was you who created my inward parts, you knit me together in my mother's womb." And I like the idea of the weaving, that God is weaving our story in and out of other stories. He's bringing characters, like Janet said, in and out of our lives. And what really struck me most in this passage, in this first prologue of the devotional, is that God is not reacting to what is happening in our lives. He is the writer, the storyteller. He is orchestrating what is happening in our lives. So when we're praying, it's not that we're asking God, did you know this was happening? He knows. He knows our story. He knows where our story's going. And sometimes we might go off script and he has to do a few quick rewrites, but he is in control. And so that thought was just hitting me as I was working on this. I was thinking of how my story has been woven over my 36 years of life and the possibilities for what the future might hold, and how God has already set that in motion, which kind of just blows my mind. So what I'm doing here is I'm cutting that Jane Davenport paper. I'm doing 1/2-inch strips, and I've kept them all in a row. You're not really going to be able to see the pattern, which is why I chose just a very loose artistic print in the background. You could use solid colors. You could use, I don't know, any kind of construction paper or cardstock that you like. And I'm going back elementary school style, weaving in and out of the pages. Do you guys remember making those lanterns when you were in elementary school, where you do the weaving and I don't know, and then you circle it up and it creates that lantern? That project just jumped into my head. But I'm adhering one edge over there on the left side, adhering that down. I'm not doing the right edge yet because as I work these in, you can see I'm going the opposite way to create that checkerboard pattern of the weaving in and out. As I work these in, I'm going to keep pressing them higher and higher, trying to make sure they're tightly in there. They have the tendency to start skewing downwards and not being straight, so I'm going to check myself several times and probably put you guys on super fast forward. Again, I adhere one side each time as I'm working, and then just keep going through to the other side, and you'll see me just weave this pattern in and out until I get to the bottom of my page. This process works great when you're working in this large illustrating Bible. There's so much room, especially here in Psalms, to work on the page. But I have also done a similar process in a regular journaling Bible with just the 2-inch margins. And when you're doing that, you probably want smaller strips, but the same process works. And you can cut the page vertically like I did, or if you're working in a smaller 2-inch margin Bible, I would do the horizontal lines so that your weaving would actually be up and down. That way you have less strips that you have to cut, but you'll still get the same effect. I mentioned before, when I originally cut into this page, it did kind of weaken the page, but as I'm adding in this cardstock, the page is becoming strong. In fact, it's probably going to end up even stronger than it did when I started, because now it's got layers of cardstock and matte gel medium. On the back, you keep seeing me flip over. Yes, there's the checkered pattern on the back. I'm not really worried about that. If and when I decide to journal on the back, I can put a large piece of cardstock over that whole backing right there and journal on top of it. Or I could probably do a very cool mixed media background thing over that checkered pattern and just use that as like a textured start for that journaling passage there. So there are some options. I'm not super worried about it. I tend to not worry about that because I do go through several journaling Bibles a year. And if something just doesn't work for me, I just pick a different Bible to journal in. So it turned out I was a little bit short. I needed a couple more strips. I'm going to trim them right here and then add them in. The last few strips, the farther you go down the page, it gets a little bit trickier to do the weaving because there's less room to work. So you have to be patient. I'm trying to be patient so that I don't tear anything. I don't want to tear towards the bottom of the page because then I would have all of the weaving fall out. That can always be fixed with washi tape, and you're going to see at the end what I do is secure the bottom with the washi tape that comes in the kit. I am so pleased with how this background came out. It was even better than I had it in my mind. I love the notebook paper. I love the splashes of color. I love the idea of the weaving and the weaving of our stories. I think it's just fantastic. I cannot wait to get into this kit. Like I said, I could not even get past the first couple pages. I didn't even get to the first Bible journaling prompts before I was just inspired to write and take notes. So I'm excited to jump into this kit even more, and I'm excited to follow everyone on Instagram that's working through this kit and see what they have, what they're learning and what God's doing with their stories. So again, like I said, I'm using the washi tape from the kit, super cute with all of these typewriters, and I'm securing it to the bottom. This is adding just a little bit of reinforcement so that nothing will tear at the bottom, trimming off the extra little typewriter. Just an extra little reinforcement, and then up here I'm going to erase the lines that I accidentally drew too far. I just wanted to keep the top of that notebook paper open, and I'm going to add a little bit of washi tape. I'm considering what I'm going to do. I guess I'm going to wait. Okay, looking at these typewriters, they are going to hold my main points. I actually did notes and journaling in the devotional, underlining and taking a few notes, writing down a few thoughts. And so on my typewriters, I'm going to stamp out and use stickers to write just the main points that came across. Here's where I'm finally grabbing that washi tape. Grabbing the washi tape to, again, add some strength to the top of where those cuts were on those lines for the weaving. And then I will be adding that file tab. This is one of the die cuts that came with the kit. It is way larger than a normal tab. It's way bigger than a normal tab, but it's going to be very cute up there. Here's the stamp set that came with the kit. I like the variety of words that came so that you can kind of use them, mix them into your titles or into your journaling. So on this yellow typewriter, I'm going to stamp out my story, his story, and then I'll be using some alpha tiles to add the word is. So my title will be My Story is His Story. I'm using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Sometimes with die cuts they have kind of a glossy finish on them, but this particular set did not. So the VersaFine works great. It is my go-to ink because it just gives really crisp, clear stamping when I'm on my stamping A game. Sometimes I'm not, and that's okay. But this ink works great with these particular die cuts, and I like how these die cuts are designed for you to add to them. You have plenty of room to add your journaling, add titles. There's all kinds of things that you can do with these die cuts to kind of interact with them. And I like how large they are. If you're working in a regular Bible, you might have to cut them down or use them as more of a tip-in, but in this illustrating Bible, they are a perfect size to add a huge impact on your page. Again, on my turquoise typewriter over here, I'm using a mix of the alpha tiles and stamping, and this time I'm writing a story with a purpose. And that's just a reminder that the things that we go through, the trials, the joys, all of it has a purpose. It's not just happenstance. God is working on us. He is sanctifying us. He is making us more like Jesus every day. And it's just a reminder that each season of your life is for a reason. And sometimes we can feel a little bit lost or feel like God might not be paying attention. But not only is He paying attention, but He is writing your story. As I position these, I'm going to add some adhesive to the back, and I'm doing a pretty good coverage because I just want to make sure they stick really well. Positioning that yellow typewriter and then adhesive on the turquoise as well. Again, pretty good coverage of adhesive all around the edges because I want to make sure these will stay in place as I flip through my journaling Bible. And I will be adhering this tab on the top. Again, this is one of the die cut pieces. I don't know that it's meant to be a tab, but it's so cute and oversized, and I just love it. My next step is going to be using the Illustrated Faith highlighter washi to highlight the verses that I've been reflecting on in this journaling entry. And Janet had us looking at 139:16 in Psalms, but I went ahead and highlighted 13 through 16. For it was you who created my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I will praise you because I have been remarkably and wondrously made. Your works are wondrous, and I know this very well. My bones were not hidden from you when I was made in secret, when I was formed in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw me when I was formless. All my days were written in your book and planned before a single one of them began. And you've seen me highlight those and add my date with my Studio Calico Mega Date stamp. I am so excited again for this devotional. I'm super pleased with how this page came out. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider hitting that subscribe button. Let me know if you're joining in on Storyteller and if you are as excited about this devotional as I am. I hope you have a great day, and as always, keep it creative.